Hello, my name's Liam. I'm Maisie's dad. I normally build water treatment works, but today I'm going to be reading from the book Woof. Hopefully you've made it all the way to chapter 14, which is what I'm going to read for you now. Enjoy. Eric and Roy didn't see each other again until Monday morning, although Roy did try to get to Eric's on Sunday morning, but was prevented by his mum. On Saturday, Roy was away all day at his grandparents' house. Sunday, it rained. On Monday, on the way to school, Roy showed Eric some foreign coins his granddad had given him. When Kenny Biggs joined them, he showed him too. Kenny, however, was interested in other things. What happened to that dog? At this point, Roy couldn't resist the urge to be mysterious. After all, where was the fun in having a secret if nobody knew you had it? Hard to say, he said. And later, that'd be telling. And later still, sorry, Kenny, it's a secret. Eric, of course, didn't approve of Roy's behaviour, but apart from the odd nudge, there was little he could do. Then, as they neared the school gates, the subject turned inevitably to Hopper. I don't think he really missed you, said Kenny. Too busy batting. And Roy said, You know, when you think about it, we've got the fourth years on us, and the second years have got us on them, and the first years have got the second years on them, and the infants have got the first years, said Eric, and the play school kids have got the infants, and the babies have got everybody, said Kenny. During assembly, Mr. Blocker sang a hymn, read a prayer, and complained about the litter. He also presented a number of swimming badges and made an announcement about Sports Day due to take place the coming Saturday. There was a buzz of excitement when Sports Day was mentioned. Under cover of it, or so he thought, Roy said, Let's go to the library at playtime and look at the dog books. That's what I was going to say, said Eric. And Mrs. Jessup said, Roy! For the first part of morning class 3 had a maths lesson with Mr. Cook. He had drawn a large graph on a marker board. It was based on a survey of children's names in the school, which some of the girls had done. According to this survey, there were 11 Tracys and 8 Garys. At the other extreme, there was only 1 Shane, 1 Angelita, and 1 Eric. Eric pretended to be pleased to be the only Eric, but privately, he rather envied the more numerous Michaels and Jonathans. Roy, there were 2 Roys, said, If they'd called you Robin, you'd have been Robin Banks. Think of that. At playtime, Eric and Roy avoided the teacher on duty and sneaked into the library. From their previous work on dogs, they knew exactly where to look. Roy was interested in reading about Norfolk Terriers. He especially wanted to see a picture of one. Eric's interest was more general. Now that he absolutely knew he'd turned into a dog, and not once but twice, he increasingly wanted to find out why. The urge was scientific. He didn't know yet how to proceed, but dog books seemed a good starting point as any. Unfortunately, each boy had barely laid hands on the book of his choice when Mr. Blocker, with a cup of tea in one hand and a starting pistol in the other, entered the library. You boys, he said. Sir, said Eric. What are you up to? Studying, sir, said Eric. Dog books, said Roy, and he held up his as proof. Mr. Blocker, however, was an experienced head. He prided himself. He knew what studying was, and what fooling around was too. He waved his pistol at them and told them to leave. At dinner time, Eric and Roy found places on Joan and Alison's table. Alison wanted to hear more about Roy's dog. Or was it Eric's? That Joan had told her about. Roy dropped a couple of hints and Eric gave him a kick under the table. Alison said, I heard of a dog once that put a bone in your bed, if it liked you. I heard of one that howled if you stroked the cat, said Joan. After dinner, Eric and Roy avoided the dinner ladies and sneaked into the infant library. Eric found a ladybird book on dogs. Roy got waylaid a little with a book called Where's Spot. It was about a puppy. You had to lift a flap on each page to find where it was hiding. Roy thoroughly enjoyed it. Suddenly, a man's face with a cigarette in it appeared at a window. It was Mr. Moody, the caretaker. He knocked on the window and gestured for them to leave. He mouthed a single word through the glass. Out! In the afternoon, Class 3 had a drama lesson with Mr. Cork. Joan and Alison asked Eric and Roy to be in their play. Joan wants you to be in our play, said Alison. No, she wants you to, said Joan. What's it about? Said Eric. It's called The Mad Professor's Daughter, said Joan. It's about a girl who comes to school and she's dressed all in black and she asks the other girls to go home with her. Any eating in it? Said Roy. He'd been in a play once about a picnic. There had been real sandwiches and real pop. Oh, said Joan. Anyway, these girls go with this girl, you see, and her father. He's the mad professor. He drugs them and chains them up in his dungeon. Where'd you get that idea from? Said Roy. Alison made it up, said Joan. No, you did, said Alison. Who's going to be the daughter? Said Eric. Me, said Alison and Joan. At the end of the day, Eric and Roy made one more effort to further their education and look at library books. This time, for a while they were successful. Roy, in fact, soon found what he was looking for, a picture of a Norfolk Terrier. Hey, Eric, look at this. But Eric was intent on his own book and did not reply. Roy said, This dog's different from you, you know. Your ears were flappier, and you had more fur. You're not a Norfolk Terrier. He considered the matter for a moment. Sorry, Eric, you're a mongrel. Just then, Mrs. Jessup entered the library. She had a coat on and was carrying a handbag and a briefcase. Eric leapt to his feet and improvised an alibi. We're doing a dog project, miss. An advanced dog project, said Roy. But Mrs. Jessup was not impressed. She had a quick look round the library to see what they were really up to and told them to go home. Out in the street, Roy said, You know, this is a dog project when you think about it, and he said, We could find out more about dogs than even the books know. You could interview them. Eric said, Don't you call me a mongrel. On the way home, Eric and Roy arranged to go to the Tate Bank Library after tea. There'd be dog books all right and no interference. When he arrived home and entered the kitchen, Eric found his mum sitting at the table reading a paper. Seen my library ticket, Mum? He said. Sitting room sideboard, said Mrs. Banks without looking up. Top drawer, right. Eric left the room and returned shortly afterwards. Mrs. Banks continued to read. What are you going to the library for? Dog books, said Eric, and immediately regretted his words. Dog books? Mrs. Banks lowered her paper and looked closely at Eric. He had the feeling she was trying to read him. She said, Is Roy going? Yes, said Eric. Is this weather to a library? Yes, it's a sort of project. Mrs. Banks continued to scrutinise her son. She said. When they reached the library, Eric and Roy headed straight for the dog books in the children's section. Here's a good un, said Roy, almost before he'd taken it from the shelf. Wild dogs and working dogs. I'm having this, said Eric. A closer look at dogs. Roy said, This one's got careers for dogs in it. Hey, we could find you a job. It says here, said Eric, a St. Bernard is 100 times heavier than a Chihuahua. I could have told you that, said Roy. Then he said, You could be a guide dog. A guard dog. The Greeks believed there was a dog with 3 heads, said Eric. A gun dog, said Roy. Half an hour later, Eric and Roy emerged from the library and stood squinting in the bright sunlight. Each was carrying 3 books, the maximum allowed. Eric had one of his own pen. It says here, he said. Hello, miss, shouted Roy. Eric looked up just in time to see Mrs. Jessup go riding by on her bicycle. Hello, boys. Mrs. Jessup, for her part, had time to notice the armful of books Eric and Roy were carrying and the library they were leaving. As she turned the corner, she felt a twinge of guilt. They really were doing a project. Eric and Roy watched her go. Then Eric said, It says here, the dog is essentially an animal of the chase, enduring, patient, intelligent, and fleet of foot. He smiled and stuck out his chest. That's me. I hope you enjoyed that. Do keep reading the rest of the book and many others. I might have to read it myself now. I've only read 1 chapter. Okay, goodbye.